Well, let's get started. Good evening and welcome to The Flame, a moth-style storytelling event guided by Stevie Taken. Tonight's theme is Disastrous Liaisons, where we'll hear fiasco stories from 6 presenters from within the Inland Empire. This is an Inlandia event, Inlandia being a literary nonprofit organization serving the Inland Empire. I'm Christina Guillen. I'm Programs Coordinator with Inlandia. And before we get started with the rest of the program, Inlandia and The Flame would like to offer a moment of silence for George Floyd and the people who have lost their lives to police brutality. Inlandia is committed to supporting and serving Black lives and all members of the Black, Indigenous, and people of color community. We invite you to join us in this moment of silence now. Thank you. A little bit about Stevie Taken. Tonight's hostess, Stevie Taken, is the creator of the storytelling event Performance Anxiety, which took place at Riverside's Menagerie. She now leads live storytelling events with Inlandia, and she does so in the moth-style storytelling form. Tonight's event may also not be suitable for all audiences as it contains adult language and content, so be advised. Please welcome Stevie Taken.
Thank you, Christina, and to Katie Porter and Inlandia. Very happy to be here again for the second live storytelling event of The Flame. As Christina mentioned, this was something we had started a few years back at the Menagerie and Back to the Grind in downtown Riverside. And it was in the spirit of The Moth, which is a live storytelling podcast. And what I love about this art form is that it is a very natural art form. It's just telling our own stories as we in the style that we would to our friends. And tonight's theme is, as suggested by Charlotte McKenzie, who is also a panelist and a presenter this evening, Disastrous Liaisons, tales of things that go terribly wrong. And I am excited for this, for these stories for you this evening, as we've been working on compiling them and presenting them over the last few weeks with the participants. I think that you'll find a lot of things in their stories to relate to, and we're in for a treat. First up this evening is Debra Price Jackson. She has, this is her second time presenting for The Flame online, and she's presented before as well for, with us for the Homespun Players when we were at the Back to the Grind, and for Debra Price Jackson, embraces the oral stories of her family, translating kitchen table memories into folk tales and fables. She lets the memories of all that has been said and done change her form from storyteller to elder. Your listening ear is gratefully appreciated. Everyone, Debra Jackson.
Hello, good evening, everyone. So let's talk about dating disasters. My older sister and I were not allowed to date until we were 16. This was Daddy's rule, but the rule didn't matter anyway. When my sister turned 16, she had a birthday party that was by invitation only. And this is a picture of me during that time period. And it happened to be on a night when Daddy didn't have to work. So he decided that he was going to stand guard at the door and check invitations. So when girls would come to the door, they could get in. He didn't even ask them for their invitations. But when the boys would come to the door, that was a whole different matter. Daddy had hidden an axe in a planter that was just inside the front door. And when the boys would come up, he would reach behind into the planter and pull out the axe, and he would start tapping the axe on his thigh as he asked the boys for their invitation. Well, needless to say, nobody offered up an invitation as they ran away. And this way, my dad felt he kept riffraff out of the party until this group, this gang of boys came to the door. They were really rowdy and they were intent on crashing the party. They were really rude, they were really mean, and just bad behaving towards my dad until he reached into the planter and pulled out the axe. But this time he hefted the axe up over his shoulder with the blade of the axe facing out to the boys. Needless to say, nothing else needed to be said as they ran off, falling over each other down the driveway into the night. The next morning at school and in the neighborhood, it was all around, not the mess with the Price girls because their dad was certifiably crazy. Consequently, I didn't get my first date until I was a freshman in college. So my freshman year in college, I worked part-time at the local hospital filling vending machines. And most of the vending machines were in the cafeteria. Well, everyone went to the cafeteria, especially the men. And there were a lot of them there. There were doctors, there were security guards, there were engineers and maintenance people. There were orderlies, just everyone that you could think of was there. And I kept getting asked out. Well, I was really scared. I was really shy and I was very naive. And I didn't know how to keep these guys from pestering me with asking me out. And there were two security guards in particular that were relentless about it, asking me out every day. So I thought that, well, you know, since no isn't working, maybe if I said yes, they would stop asking me. And I want to show you a picture of me in college. That's me in college. And I'm wondering, how do I get these guys to stop asking me out? So I said, well, maybe if I said yes, they would stop. So the next security guy that asked me out, I said yes. And it turned out that he wanted to take me out on a date with his mother and his aunts and his sister to celebrate Mother's Day. And I thought, wow, what could possibly go wrong? His mom is with us. So we go to this blues club in Chicago, and it's a really cool place. There's a large dance floor, a lot of people up dancing. There's a big band, Mardi Gras decoration hanging, and our table is like right up on the floor. And they have these wonderful appetizers. And I just keep eating the appetizers because I am so nervous and I'm so scared. Well, his mom kept ordering me drinks. They were called White Russians. And I didn't know how to drink. So I kept drinking them. It was delicious. They were made of Kahlua and milk, and they were sweet and they were tasty. And after the second drink, I started complimenting her on her outfit. And I said, yeah, what a beautiful outfit you're wearing. It was this nice blue pantsuit with a white lapel, and it was either satin or lame, and it was shimmering in the light. It was just really pretty. And she said, oh, well, thank you very much. I really appreciate the compliment. My son bought this for me for Mother's Day. Isn't it beautiful? He's such a good boy. He really, really is. And thank you. And here's another drink. So By the time I got to my fourth White Russian, I realized I needed to go to the ladies' room. And I get up and I start staggering. I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I'm weaving back and forth as I try to make my way to the ladies' room. I open the ladies' room door and his mom is on the other side. And I'm real happy and excited to see her. And she takes one look at me and throws out her arms to catch me as I start falling. And as I'm falling, I'm thanking her and I'm throwing up all over her Mother's Day outfit. And her sisters try to help me up off the floor, and I'm slipping and I'm falling and I'm laughing and still throwing up, and they keep trying to get me up so they can clean me off. And I'm tripping other women that are coming into the bathroom, and it's a mess. And they finally get me up and they get me cleaned off and they get me back out to the table, which at that point I pass out in the chair onto the chair next to me. Well, I don't remember how they got me out of the club into the car, or how they got me from the car up to my dorm, or how they got me from the dorm up to my bed. But I do remember that the next day at work, their son, the security guard, avoids me. Not only does he avoid me, he never asked me out again. And also the offers of dates start slowing down. So I'm thinking, well, I guess yes works. So when the next security guard asks me out, I say yes. And he took me on a tour of Chicago. Great things. We went to Old Town, to Middle Eastern restaurants to watch belly dancing. We went to Greek restaurants to dance. We went to see the hotels along the Golden Mile along Michigan Avenue. And finally, it's late in the evening and conversation has kind of died down. And he's taking me home to my dorm. And he very quietly says, "Would you like to go see the submarines race?" And I thought, far out, that's really cool. I love submarines. And I tell him, yes, let's go. This is exciting. This is going to be the best date ever. How did you know that I love submarines? Let's go. And so we drive over to the Chicago River, and there's a parking lot that's a strip of parking meters. And then there's a railing that separates the parking lot from the river. And as we pull into the parking lot, I'm going, I don't see anyone. It's really dark out here. This is what I'm thinking. And he pulls into a parking space, and as soon as he parks, I go to jump out of the car. And he startles and he says, "Where are you going?" And I say, "Well, you can't see them from here." And he says, "What?" And I say, "The submarines." And he does all he can do to not break out laughing. But I could tell this is what he's doing, and I'm a little embarrassed. And I think, well, of course we can't see them from here. They're underwater. And I tell him this. So he does even better trying not to break out laughing, but I could tell. And I tell him, "I'm not stupid. I know that we can't see them. I was just playing. We can't see them because it's nighttime." Well, then he lost it. And he grabs my hand and he pulls me back in the car and he says, "It's time to get you home." And he takes me back to my dorm. The very next day, he avoids me. He never asks me out again. As a matter of fact, I don't get asked out by anyone at the hospital again. And it's years later that I learned that going to see the submarine races is a makeout line that boys use on dates. Well, I guess lessons learned. And that's it.
Thank you, Debra. I do love your stories about you coming of age because they're just, as you know, as I've shared with you, they're so relatable for me. I too was very naive for a long time. So I appreciate you having the courage and speaking out for all of us naive ladies. Okay, next we have second time the Flame contributor as well, Alben Chamberlain. Alben Chamberlain was born in San Bernardino, attended San Bernardino Valley College, and graduated with a BA in Travel and Tourism Management from BYU in Hawaii. He has an MBA degree from the American Graduate School in Glendale, Arizona. He's served as supply officer in the U.S. Navy Reserve, a federal bank examiner in the FDIC, and a retirement counselor with a large insurance company. He holds 3 teaching credentials and has taught for over a decade in secondary schools in the Inland Empire. Everyone, Al.
Good afternoon. The name of my story is Johnnie The Astronaut. This story takes place in my childhood back in the analog age. It involves a windy day in April, a space race, and the impulsiveness of youth. It took place right here in the San Bernardino Valley, and I was just 1 month short of my 11th birthday and 2 months short of finishing 5th grade. Back in those days, I was a skinny kid. I didn't like school very much, although I was reading at the 11th grade level and devouring every book that I could get my hands on. But I was very hyperactive, and I couldn't sit still for longer than 10 minutes behind a desk. The time between recesses at school felt like an eternity. What I did like in those days was to play sandlot baseball and to play endless games and pranks with my siblings in the front yard or in the vacant fields near my home. I also liked helping my dad in the gardens and the orchard and with the animals. When I wasn't helping my dad, I was playing amateur zoologist out in the ditch, capturing horned lizards, or in the field, catching gopher snakes, or catching a prized specimen of lizard for my collection. My older sister said I had reptiles on the brain. For some reason, I liked the scaly and scary creatures as pets rather than the cute and cuddly ones that everybody else liked. My prize pet alligator lizard, my prize reptile pal that year was a large alligator lizard that I had captured. Now, alligator lizards are fairly common in the foothills and valley, but they're very difficult to catch. They're very secretive by nature. They like staying under logs and wood piles and thick brush. They're very fast and very fierce looking. Now, the boys in my neighborhood said that alligator lizards were the badasses of the lizard tribe. You can see a picture here. An adult male could be 11, 12 inches long and have a 7-inch snake-like tail. They moved like a snake also and had a very large head and jaws, and they weren't afraid to use them in order to bite down on like a vise on a finger or thumb if they were picked up with a bare hand. When I caught my prize specimen, I was moving a wood pile near the fence, and I caught sight of it. I was fortunate enough to be wearing tennis shoes and some athletic socks. So we slowly removed the piece of the wood from the wood pile, fearful it might be a snake. When I got down to 3 or 4 pieces of wood, I took off my shoes and my socks, and I put the cotton socks over my hands. When I picked up that last piece of wood, that lizard bolted like a racehorse out the gate, and I ran after it like a bolt of lightning and cut him off before he reached the fence line. He twisted and turned, he hissed and lunged and hissed like a snake, but finally I managed to get my hand down behind it and grab it by the shoulders so he couldn't turn around and bite my hand. I put him into a paper grocery bag and went about preparing a habitat for him. I emptied out a wooden toy crate and painted it with glossy white enamel paint so he couldn't climb up the sides and escape. Then we filled it with sand and gravel and some rocks and wood for his habitat. We decided to name that lizard Johnny after John Wayne, the most badass actor of the Western movies and war movies that we all loved. I was also thinking about John Glenn, the boldest and bravest of the Mercury astronauts who had circled Earth 3 times in the Friendship 7 capsule back in February of 1962. Now the boys in my neighborhood all thought that the lizard was cool and wicked, but the girls all said that he was gross and ugly. Sometimes when they'd come out of the house to bug us and when they're playing our backyard games, I'd sneak off to the habitat and grab the lizard and chase him back into the house screaming for mama. That lizard was 10 and a half or 11 inches long and as fierce looking as a lizard could be without being an iguana or a Gila monster. Now, I wanted to keep Johnny as my pal because I was very proud of him. Very few kids in my age actually had one. So I wanted to keep him as my pal all the way through high school. I knew that alligator lizards could live up to 20 years, so I figured he could live out his retirement years he could live out his golden years under some retirement woodpile. On the day of the fiasco, it was a warm and windy day. It was in April and on a Saturday, and we were bored and restless inside. All the shows were over on the television, and we couldn't go out in the field like we wanted to play the baseball with the gang because of the strong gusting winds. We also couldn't dig a fort without getting all the dirt in our hair and our mouths. Then my friend Frankie Curtis said, "Hey, I've got a brand new kite in my house that I haven't even opened. Would you like to put it together and fly it in the field?" My older brother said, "Cool, that would be so great. Why don't you go get it and I'll go look for the string that I have in my room. It's left over from the old kite we busted up last October." So off we went, and 10 minutes later, Frankie was back on our doorstep with a brand new red and white plastic kite still in this wrapper. We quickly assembled that kite on the kitchen table and made sure to tape the kite to the frame using cellophane tape. We went out to the vacant field and made sure the string was securely attached. Then we launched it and watched it fly high into the sky. It soared and it bobbed and weaved around, and we were having such a great time taking turns seeing how high that kite would go. After about 60 or 70 minutes, our throats were as dry and parched as sandpaper, so we all retreated to the kitchen to get some Kool-Aid from the refrigerator. While we were drinking and laughing, my older brother came up with one of his genius ideas. He said, "Hey, why don't we go get Johnny from its habitat and attach it to our kite? He could be the first lizard astronaut in history." Stunned by his comment, I didn't know how to answer. Finally, I blurted out, "But Johnny's way too strong and quick. He won't stay attached to that kite no matter how much string or tape we put around his body." My brother said, "We don't need to use string or tape, knucklehead. We'll just use one of Mama's gallon plastic storage bags." And I thought for a second and then said, "But how do you propose keeping that bag attached to the kite with all this wind?" He said, "Oh, that's easy, knucklehead. We'll just put a hole in the top and attach it to the kite with a string." I had no comeback for that one. And then my friend Frankie Curtis said, "Oh, that would be so cool. I'd love to be the first one to launch a lizard astronaut up from the Earth." Okay, so he said, "Do we have any more string around here?" And I said, "No, we don't have any more unless you have some at your house." So off to the vacant field we went on the corner of 5th and Del Rosa Avenue. First I went to the habitat and got my lizard out and brought him into the kitchen. We put him into the gallon bag and made sure it was tightly sealed. Then my brother said, "Oh, maybe we should get Mama to shoot a picture of this capsule when we bring it down. We could send it off to the newspaper. They might even put it on the front page." I always thought my older brother was a genius, but sometimes he was a complete idiot. So I looked at him laughing and I said, "And you believe that the newspaper guys would take the word of a 12-year-old boy when he said he launched the first reptilian lizard from the surface of the Earth?" He says, "Oh, well, it was just an idea. Now let's go launch our kite before the wind dies down." So off we went to the corner field on the corner of 5th and Del Rosa Avenue. And we made sure that the kite was tightly around the stick. The string was tightly around the stick. And we let it out about 15 feet and went running. Up and up into the sky went the kite into the embrace of the wind. And we watched as it went higher and higher, as our launch vehicle went higher and higher. And we were sitting there laughing and jumping up and down, laughing like hyenas to see that capsule twist and turn and gyrate in the wind. Soon the kite was so high up in the sky, it looked just like a red and white dot at the end of the string. When we got down to the last yard of string on the stick, my brother said, "Oh, we better bring the kite back down before Johnny gets too battered up or runs out of air." So we slowly began reeling that kite in like a fisherman would a trout in a fast rushing stream. We slowly and carefully, our launch vehicle came down, but we couldn't see the capsule until it was at least 100 feet above the ground. Then I looked up, and to my horror, I saw that there was no large object or opaque object inside the bag to block the sunlight from coming through. I yelled out, "Oh, Johnny, what's happened to Johnny?" We finally wrestled that kite down to the ground and ran over to it. We saw that it was still firmly attached to the kite, and the cellophane tape was still sealing it shut. There was, however, a large ragged hole at the bottom of the plastic bag that told the sad tale. Our brave and intrepid astro lizard had used its sharp claws to try to free itself from its captivity. Its instincts all said that it had to find a place of safety. There was, however, no place of safety 1,000 feet or more above a vacant field or a busy roadway. Once he tore a hole large enough, gravity took over and ended his short, sad life as my pal. We searched in shock around that vacant field for about half an hour, but we quickly realized that the area where our brave lizard astronaut could have fallen was far too large. Its gravity-crushed body was never recovered. Nevertheless, we built a pyramid of stones near the roadway as a memorial, and we made a cardboard plaque to go on the memorial that said, "Here lies Johnny, a brave astro lizard who died in the exploration of space." I often feel bad that I let my older brother and my friend talk me into taking Johnny out of his habitat, launching him up from the earth where he belonged. Nevertheless, I was having just as much fun as they were. So who am I to cast all the blame on them? My brave, my badass lizard pal never got to see me graduate from high school. He never even survived to see me start the 6th grade. His life was sacrificed in the boyhood game of space exploration and the conquest of the final frontier. I'd like to say that he died as a hero, although he never volunteered to be one.
Thank you, Al, for sharing that story, and rest in peace, you brave Johnny Astro, the reluctant astro lizard. Okay, now we are moving on to our next storyteller. She is a returning storyteller to the flame. Faizah Rajput is a writer from Southern California. She has her BA in English Creative Writing from Cal State University, San Bernardino, and her MFA in Writing from Otis College of Art and Design, where she was in the publishing track. Faizah is a Los Angeles Review of Books 2019 Publishing Fellow and was recently nominated for an ICAD Postgraduate Teaching Fellowship. You can find Faizah on Instagram at @forfaizah. Everyone, Faizah Rajput.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So my story starts off at David's Bridal, where I was fortunate enough to get a job that my sister helped me get. And this was about 5 years ago. So they brought me on as a stylist. And it was one of the more better jobs that I had. And it was one of the most difficult jobs I had at the same time. And that was because I spent all day talking with girls, picking their wedding dresses and hearing their love stories and their wedding plans, and basically like designing their dream ideal look for their wedding day. And simultaneously, I was going through a divorce while helping people pick out their wedding dress, design their dream wedding day, and listen to their life plans with their soulmate or their partner. So it was like a really kind of difficult and traumatic time. But I kind of just like powered through it, and I would work nonstop all the time just so that I didn't have to think about my divorce. And the divorce kind of threw me for a loop because I was married to my high school sweetheart. And so my sister decided one day that we were going to use the 4-day weekend and we were going to take a road trip together. And so I was really hesitant and I had no idea what she had in mind. At the time, I was driving a 1992 Mazda Miata, a blue one with flip-top lights. I had nothing to my name except that car. And she said, no, we'll take my Acura and we'll go drive up to Astoria, Oregon, and we'll see where they filmed the Goonies. And that film was like our childhood adventure movie together. So anytime we'd watch that movie, it was like a hard reset for us that like life is fun and there's nothing to worry about. And so here we were like, okay, we can do this. And I was hesitant at first, but she was like, no, you used to be adventurous. You can do this. We can do this. And we'll take the car. Nobody will even know we're gone. And we'll drive straight up there. We'll take turns driving, and then we'll turn around once we get there and we'll head back home. Mind you, this is like a 20-hour drive or so. But you know, we were the kind of young where you're drinking Dr. Peppers and Flamin' Hot Cheetos in the car, and that's enough. And so we did it, and we took the 5 to the 101, and we got to that point where we saw the coastline in the Goonies that they see through the medallion. And that was like a really pivotal moment for us, where we kind of just stopped and we realized that we made it all this way together. And along the way, we were taking pictures, and we would stop. We drove through the redwood trees. We saw the sequoias, and it was just really special. And we were like, okay, we made it. We did it. And then we spent the night next to our car in a campground, sleeping on yoga mats, because we had no idea what we were going to do for the night. And then the next morning we were like, let's do this, let's go home. So when we were turning around to head home, I think it was like nighttime on the 5 freeway at a certain point, and she had passed out. And so I was like, you know what, I can do this. I'm just going to haul ass and get us home. And I was hitting the foot on the gas, going up that steep hill next to all these big, massive trucks, and there's nothing but trees around us for miles. And we come up to this town called Weed, California. And I noticed I'm hitting the gas, but nothing's happening. And the car's actually rolling backwards. And I'm like, oh shit. I immediately, I was like, something's wrong, And I had a feeling that the transmission failed, which it was, in fact, the transmission failed. So really quickly, using my Mazda Miata skills, I turned the car to the side of the road. And she woke up in the meantime, and she was like, oh my God, what? And I said, the car's not going and I'm hitting the gas. And so it was literally the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we were supposed to be able to work closing shifts that day. And so really hesitantly, we called my parents, and they didn't know what to do. They were really annoyed, but also like, they knew that we were going to do something dumb like this, but it's just the norm. So we called a tow truck, and then a tow truck saw us on the side of the road, and he was like, I can take you guys to the next town. And we were like, okay, let's either get murdered or let's just go to the next town. And we're like, let's just go to the next town. So we got to the next town, and there was basically one auto shop that was closed and a hotel. And so it was like a motel. So we stayed the night in this motel, and we called everybody at work, and we called my parents, and the transmission was in fact failed, and it was going to take 2 weeks to get the parts to fix the car. And so what ended up being a 4-day trip ended up being a couple of weeks, but it was really special. And I don't know how to quantify this. I think about this trip a lot, but I feel like the whole point of me getting married was to go on that trip, because I don't think that trip would have happened had I not gotten married and divorced. And I'm so grateful and fortunate that I have a little sister that inspires me and forces me to do big things like that. And I think that's gonna be a continuous theme in our life together. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Faizah. I love that story. I think we were talking about it when you first shared it with us, that often when you feel your life is sort of falling apart, that's a good moment or good time for transformation when you don't even realize it in the moment, and you can reflect back on it later. Okay, we're moving on. We have another returning storyteller. We have Charlotte Mackenzie Ransom. Charlotte is a native of California and has lived in Riverside for over 50 years, off and on. After exploring other cities in Southern California, Charlotte and her husband Bob moved back to Riverside and purchased the home Charlotte grew up in from her parents in 2005. Charlotte considers herself to be an artist in disguise as a realtor. She has always loved performing, and when she is not selling real estate, she can be found on stage at Riverside Community Players or working on art projects with the 52 Project at the Riverside Art Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, Charlotte Mackenzie.
Hello. I am, hold on, my computer is giving me weird signals. Okay. I am here to talk about my fiasco story. And my fiasco story has to do with pregnancy. And you know, pregnancy can be exciting, it can be treacherous, it can be an adventure for all parents. But I feel like that sometimes I'm kind of the queen of fiascos when it comes to pregnancy. For example, when my first son was in the womb, I got chickenpox in the 3rd trimester, which is not good for the baby or the mother. And it turned out okay. He was born fine. I survived, but it was just a foreshadowing of things to come. And because I'm not talking about that fiasco tonight. Tonight, I am talking about the fiasco of the birthday of my 2nd son, Jack. His pregnancy was a true fiasco story. I was 9 months pregnant, and it was 22 and a half years ago in 1998. And we had a tumultuous 9 months during this pregnancy. We had moved from Palm Springs to Concord, California, and we had moved in a year where there was an El Nino event, and the El Nino event meant that it rained every day, all day, from October all the way until April. Every day, all day. For a Southern California girl, that was not a good thing, especially when I have an 18-month-old running under my feet and I'm 9 months pregnant. I also had morning sickness almost the entire pregnancy. I think I actually lost weight with this pregnancy because I had a rather difficult time with Jack. And Jack was perfectly happy, not going anywhere. He was inside the womb. He was comfortable, sucking all of my energy out of me every single day. And I feel like it was constant, hopeful, he's going to come now, but he doesn't. We would go into the doctor's office and have our appointments. You know, you're having appointments like every week when you're in your 9th month, which is actually really the 10th month of your pregnancy, because at 40 weeks, it's almost 10 months, ladies. 10 months. They don't tell you that when you go skipping in for that first appointment with the OBGYN. But I was ready for Jack to come out. Jack was not ready to come out. So finally, the doctor, when we were past our due date, the doctor said, okay, if next week Jack does not come out of his own volition, then we will induce labor the day after your next appointment. Well, that was like music to my ears. I was completely ready for that. I called my mom and said, okay, we've actually got a due date. If he doesn't come before, it's going to be on this Tuesday, January 20th. We're going to have this baby. It's going to be great. We could kind of plan for it. And of course, Jack did not show up during that week. He forced us to play our hand and induce labor. So the morning of, we get to the hospital early. They hook us up to all the apparatus that we're hooked up to. And they have, you know, the baby's vitals being checked, my vitals being checked, and they give me the medication that starts the labor, and it works. And I'm having contractions every 5 to 10 minutes, and it hurts. And you know how it is when you're having a baby. So about 3 hours into this, one of the nurses noticed that every time I had a contraction, Jack's vitals would drop. He would lose oxygen, and his heart rate would slow down, and it looked like maybe he might have been in stress. And Bob, my husband, and I were familiar with this because when our first son, Jared, was born, same thing happened, and it turns out he was tied up with his umbilical cord and was being choked every time I had a transaction. So we had an emergency C-section with him. A little bit of foreshadowing here, maybe. So they call in the doctor. And the doctor comes in, and the doctor's not there the whole time you're in labor. It's just not possible because sometimes labor takes a really long time, and he has other patients maybe, but they call him in, and he comes in, and he and my husband Bob had a great rapport, and they're chatting away, and I'm having contractions, and he's checking to see what's happening when I have a contraction, and he decides, maybe Jack might be in a little bit of stress, so let's check your dilation and see if anything's breaching, if he's ready. So he's doing this and everything's all casual, happy, we're all doing well. And all of a sudden the doctor gets this terrified look on his face. He says, "Holy cow!" And he pulls his hand out of me, backs away from the stirrups, and he says, "What was that?" And everybody in the room is looking at one another going, we don't know, what was that? It took a minute for the doctor to recompose himself, and he apologized. He said, I'm so sorry. This is the first time this has ever happened in my 28 years of being an OBGYN. Your son just bit my finger. Bit the doctor's finger. He's still inside the womb, mind you. He's not coming out. He bit the doctor's finger. Well, obviously this was not a good sign because his mouth was not supposed to be where it was. So we started making plans for the emergency C-section. And what had happened was Jack was a big baby. He was almost 9 pounds, and he was stuck. His head had gotten stuck on my pelvic bone and pushed his face up in such a way that his mouth was pressed right up against my cervix. So when the doctor went to check my dilation, his finger went right into Jack's mouth. And what did Jack do? He bit down. He was hungry. He's been hungry ever since. So he bit the doctor while he was still in the womb. Fortunately, the C-section was successful. We rescued Jack, and he came out a happy baby with maybe just a bruise on his forehead from my pelvic bone pressing up against him. So they whisked him and my husband up to our room where we had in the maternity ward while I was in recovery. And you have a full epidural when you get a C-section, so you don't move, you can't move, you slowly come back. And I tend to take a little longer with these things. Like if it says may cause drowsiness, that means it's going to knock Charlotte out. So when I have anesthesia or anything like that, it takes me a little longer. So they keep walking by and pinching you, and they say, "Do you feel that? Do you feel that?" I'm like, well, yeah. So eventually my husband calls down, "Where's my wife? I've got a screaming baby up here. He's hungry always. And I need to feed him, and I can't do that. I need my wife here." So they decide I can move my arms a little bit, so maybe, okay, we're ready to take her upstairs. So they assign someone to take me up to our room. We go out, and we're waiting in the elevator for the elevator, and I was still kind of out of it, and another nurse comes running up to the attendant who was with me and said something, and the only word I heard was "stat," and they both went racing off. I'm there, elevator comes down, bing. Nobody in the elevator, bing. I don't know how long I was there. I probably dozed off a little bit, but eventually someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, there you are. We lost you." And I'm like, "You lost me? You left me. I can't move. I just had a C-section. I didn't go anywhere." Well, it turns out it was a little crazy day. I don't know if it was a full moon or what, but they had a lot of babies being birthed that day, and they didn't realize that I had not made it to my destination, which was our room, until my husband called down a second time, 20 minutes after the first time, to say, "Where's my wife?" That's when they sent out the rescue to find me. So eventually I did. I made it upstairs. Everything was great. Jack was a healthy baby. And actually, the fun part of the story is a week later when I went in for my follow-up checkup, the doctor decided that he had to see this kid. He comes running out, and we're in the waiting room, and there's 10 or 12 other women in there, and he comes running out and he says, "I got to see, where is this little guy that bit me?" And he introduced himself to Jack, and he introduced the whole room into Jack, explaining how Jack had bitten him while still in the womb. I think that's kind of tells the story, and that face right there tells you how mischievous Jack was for the rest of his life. And he's grown up to be a strapping young man, and we're very proud of him, but his beginning was certainly a fiasco.
Yay. Thank you, Charlotte.
Mhm.
That baby looks very proud to have just bitten his doctor, to say. All right, we're going to move on. We have a first-time contributor to The Flame, but not new to Inlandia Institute. We have joining us this evening, Juanita E. Mantz, or Jem for short, is a writer, performer, lawyer, slash deputy public defender in Riverside, representing those incompetent to stand trial. Her stories have been published in numerous literary journals and magazines. Jem is a member of the Macondo Writers Workshop and VONA. She recently completed her memoir, My Inland Empire, about growing up in Ontario, California in the 70s and 80s. You can read her Life of Jem blog about her life in the Inland Empire and watch her video podcast of the same name at Rag House Media on Facebook. Jem has presented at AWP, the UCR Punk Conference, and was a 2016 cast member of Listen to Your Mother in Burbank. She is a proud resident of San Bernardino and loves punk rock music. She is in the low-res MFA program in creative writing at UNO. Find her at Life of Jem on Twitter and follow her Life of Jem blog on Facebook. Everyone, Juanita Mantz.
Hi, everyone. This story is called Punk Rock Girl. Punk Rock Girl. I'm in my senior year of high school at Chaffey High School in Ontario, California. It is 1989, and I know it is 1989 because Pizza Hut is still a real restaurant. People wear their headphones, they use their Walkmans, and you still have to wait in line at Music Plus to buy concert tickets. Imagine that. 1989 is also the year The Cure comes out with their seminal album, Disintegration. And me and my best friend Tracy, her parents will leave on a bowling tournament to Laughlin, and we will play that album on blast, on repeat, jumping up and down, drinking Coors Light after Coors Light. As an aside, it is 30 years later, and we still do this, except we've switched from Coors Light to Michelob Ultra, and from CDs back to vinyl. Now, 1989 is also the year that I drop out of high school, 5 units short of a diploma. And I am in the bleachers, sitting with my mom and my dad on graduation day, but I am not walking. My twin sister is down in the field getting ready to walk. My little sister Annie is there, and my Tio, my Uncle Roland, my godfather is there. He drove down from the OC in his old school van with the scene of Hawaii painted on the side. And Roland is a dead ringer for Wolfman Jack. And when my twin sister Jackie walks up from the field, he looks at her, he won't look at me, and he says, "Congratulations, mija," and hands her $50. I look up into the sky and blink. He was my Tio. Jackie only got him for us to share after she lost her godfather who died on an operating table. And we were made to share Roland like everything else as twins. My mom turns her head and looks at me and says, "Dropouts and losers don't get $50 or anything else for that matter." I look at Roland and think, say something. He stays silent. My little sister Annie grabs my hand. My dad puts his hand on my shoulder and mutters, "Judy, take it easy on her." I push them both away. I look at my mom and think, did she think I wanted this to happen? I was the smart one. My sister stole my homework our whole high school career. And she's walking, my twin sister, not me. It only took me a year to ruin my life. I slept my way through my senior year, drinking, partying, but it wasn't just the drinking and partying. It was the culmination of all the chaos. My parents lost their house. My dad lost his bar, his business, and then his oldest daughter, my half-sister Barbara, died in a car accident suddenly. The day he found out, he locked himself in the bathroom with a gun. It took my mom hours to get him out of there. Then moving from rental to rental like nomads. Senior and junior year weren't all bad, don't get me wrong. There was partying, there were concerts in Hollywood, punk show after punk show, but that was just an escape, you see. And it didn't help that I was working 20 hours a week at Round Table and drinking with the managers after work. But the worst part to me is that I never really made the decision to drop out. It was just easier than working my way through the darkness. That senior year, I would sleep and sleep. I would hide, my mom would leave for work, and I would go back to bed. Then I stopped caring if she knew. She would come into the room, scream at me, hit me, yell, throw water on me, and I would say, just leave me alone. I want to be left alone. And the truth is, I had been fighting depression for years. All of my childhood chaos came home to roost that year. Now, back on graduation day, I'm up in those bleachers, and I look at my mom and dad and my sister and my uncle, and I say, screw it. I go hide underneath the bleachers where it's dark and smells like piss. It matches my mood. I smoke cigarette after cigarette, my thick black Susie Sue eyeliner dripping down my face. I wipe the edge of my face with my Sex Pistols tee. And I think, I am a loser, just like my mom said. I hear them call Tracy's name, and I cry even harder. But then I think of going to Hollywood Palladium and seeing the Smiths with Morrissey on stage with his flowers and his hearing aid and jumping up and down for joy. And I think to myself, that was a good day. And then they call my twin sister Jackie's name. And I know I should go out into the sun and watch her walk. She's my wonder twin. We had our own language as kids, but I can't. I just cry even harder. And then I think back to when I was a little girl, my mom and dad would fight and kick us out of the house and we'd sleep at the park. And I would take a flashlight with me and read book after book after book. F. Scott Fitzgerald, S.E. Hinton, Judy Blume, all of my mom's Harlequin romance novels. I was an eclectic reader. But I found something in those books. They saved me. They showed me there was something else out for me there. I would dream myself into those books. And then when I found punk and post-punk music, I found a place to put all of my anger and sadness. Those books saved me, that music saved me. And as I sat under the bleachers that day in the dark, the words to a Smith song echoed in my head. If a double-decker bus crashes into us, to die by your side is a heavenly way to die. And I thought to myself, do you want to die? And that day under the bleachers, I decided no, I wanted to live. I wanted out of this piss-ant Ontario town. I wanted to be someone. And I told myself that day, you are going to be okay. And I was okay. It took years and years, don't get me wrong, hard work, waitressing my way, taking my GED, waitressing my way through junior college, through UCR, through USC Law School. But the day that I walked at USC Law in my cardinal red cap and gown and gold, I saw my mom, my dad, and my sisters cheering for me in the audience, and I knew I had made it. I had redeemed myself, finally. And now I work as a deputy public defender, representing the most mentally ill of the mentally ill population who have nothing. Their lives are in complete chaos. They just need a little hope. And when they ask me, for that hope, I tell them what I thought under the bleachers that day. You are going to be okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Juanita. Very powerful story, and your clients are very fortunate to have you. Thank you for that message. We are going to move on to our final contributor this evening. We're joined this evening by John DeFusco. He is our first time The Flame contributor. And just in case, because I don't specifically recall if it was mentioned earlier, but I'll mention it again here, a little disclaimer. There is some, for themes, for some more adult themes may not be appropriate for children in this story, but it's definitely worth sticking around. It's very fun, I promise. All right. John DeFusco is an actor, writer, director with more than 40 years experience. He is most known for the creation of the landmark Vietnam play Tracers, which premiered at the Odyssey Theater, went on to Chicago's Steppenwolf in New York, where John directed the premiere. It ran for 6 months, was published in 10 Best, and went on to national and international tours. He is the recipient of numerous theater awards and Commendation Medal for Vietnam service. His theatrical journey began at RCC, where he enrolled after discharge at March Air Force Base. Ladies and gentlemen, John DeFusco.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for zooming in. My story tonight is called Coattails, an 80s road trip. I've driven across country many times over the years. So many that I couldn't even count. Through the 70s, it became an obsession. Something about staring at that white line, watching that horizon, and going from state to state to state, meeting new people. What Kerouac called all that raw land, and all that road going, and all the people dreaming, and the immensity of it all. In the 80s, in Hollywood, everyone is doing, well, everyone I know is doing coke. Now, to do coke, you got to have a friend. My friend is a guy named Guy. Guy is a tall, lanky guy with a pencil-thin mustache and slicked back hair. He personifies that expression, party animal. He says things like, pleasure is my business. Guy, he's an actor, coke dealer. This is something that was quite common in 1980s Hollywood. He introduces me to the Hollywood club scene, the rock scene. He takes me to the infamous 01 Art Gallery, which actually opens up at 2 a.m. and where they took all sorts of punk rock, pre-hipster, artsy types, rock stars, partying like rock stars till 4:30 a.m. When you do coke, you tend to have some long conversations, which results in a sort of bonding, and you become friends with people. Guy and I do a couple of plays together and several all-night parties, and we become friends. One day, Guy gets the job of driving a Honda Civic from LA to New York. I decide to go along with him and share the driving and visit my family in Massachusetts. We leave LA early one morning. Guy brings along an eight ball of coke. We do a couple of lines and head on out. 4 hours later, Vegas. You want to stop for a minute? Sure, man, we'll stop. So we stop. Now, I'm not much of a gambler, so I go directly to the bar and have a beer. Guy goes to the roulette table. After my beer, I start circling the slot machines. And then I come around to Guy and I say, you ready to go? He's, no, I'm not ready to go. Circle and circle the slot machines. I come back. You ready to go, man? No, man, I'm not ready to go. Give me a hard look. I circle and I circle and I circle. The day is almost gone and we're only in Vegas. I come back over to the Guy and I say, look, man, are you ready to go? No, man, I'm not ready to go. I lose it. I collar him in a headlock, drag him out of the casino and across the parking lot. He's fighting all the way. We get to the car. We're standing there. People are walking by. I say to him, get in. No, fuck you, man. I'm not getting in the car. Get in the car. No, man, fuck you. I'm not getting in the car. Guy, please, get in the freaking car. Now, for some reason, I have no idea why, at that point, he decides to strip off all his clothes. People are walking by. Here is this tall, lanky guy standing there in nothing but a red Speedo. He throws his clothes in the back seat, piles into the passenger seat, and promptly passes out. So now, I'm going down the highway with a nearly naked guy. We get to the Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam is crowded. It slows down. Traffic is going really slow, like 10 miles an hour. Tourists are looking into the car, gawking at a nearly naked guy. Seniors on buses peeking out the windows, eyes poking out, looking on a nearly naked guy. Truckers are honking their horns at a nearly naked guy. He sleeps all the way across Arizona. He wakes up, says, "Where's my clothes, man?" In the back seat. Oh, gets dressed. Says, "Sorry about that, man." "Yeah, it's okay, it's okay. Look, we'll stop and get something to eat in New Mexico." Okay, head on back out on the road. New Mexico, a few hours later. We're at a Holiday Inn. We get something to eat. We go into the men's room. We do a couple of lines. As we're coming out of the men's room, we notice a large group of people streaming into a ballroom. I don't know why, but for some reason we decide to join them. We're pretty high and we're feeling very sociable. We get in there and we realize that it's a huge party for a silver mining company. We start meeting really important people. We're working the party. We're bullshitting our way all over the place. Guy is holding court, telling people about the famous people that he knows. Everything is going really great until all of a sudden the baggie full of coke falls out of his pocket onto the floor and we are asked to leave very politely. So we get to the car, we say, well, fuck them. We don't want to know those people anyway, stripping the earth for profit. Do a couple more lines and hit the road. We're on the road for 24 hours straight, doing line after line and watching that white line go by all the way to West Virginia to my sister's house. When we get there, we are higher than fuck. Hi, Pat. This is my sister, Pat. Guy, this is my friend, Guy, and we are talking way too much. We're overlapping like David Mamet characters. All of a sudden, in the middle of it all, my sister, Pat, butts in and says, "Guy, are you a coke dealer?" Says, no, he's an actor like me. The guy says, "Yeah, I'm an actor like him." Well, Guy, you can sleep in the basement. Johnny, you're on the couch. We spend the night in fitful attempts at sleeping. We get up in the morning, get ready for the 12-hour drive to New York. We're driving along. I lean over, I look at Guy, and I say, "Can I get a line?" He says, I did it all in your sister's basement." Okay. So the rest of the trip is drug-free. We begin to normalize. We begin to have quiet, friendly conversations. And I begin to realize that we can be friends without coke, without doing an all-night party. We get to New York, we deliver the car, and we part ways. I hop a train to Massachusetts, take out my Walkman, pop in a new tape that I've been wanting to listen to, put on the headphones, and I'm singing along. Pilgrims and families, we are going to Graceland, Graceland, Graceland. My traveling companion is 9 years old. He is the child of my first marriage. I've a reason to believe we all will be received in Graceland, 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 Graceland. I get to my parents' house. It's late. They're asleep. I'm on the screened-in porch, puffing on a Marlboro, looking up at the stars, the Big Dipper, listening to a symphony of crickets while fireflies float by. And I think of Kerouac. And I think of all that raw land and all that road going and all the people dreaming and the immensity of it all. And I think of Guy. I think of my friend, Guy. My friend, actor, coke dealer, nearly naked, actually very hairy, Guy.
Thank you, John. And Guy, if you're out there, hello. Nice to meet you. We
He
were all
could
hoping
be.
that you could make it. Well, it's been recorded.
I said he could be. He could be out there.
He could be. You might be out there.
Oh, yes.
I would like to meet him, maybe not go on a road trip with him though, but I do want to go on a road trip after tonight's presentations. That's all we have for you this evening. That does conclude the Flame. I want to thank Katie Porter and Christina Guillen and Inlandia Institute for providing this space for the Flame and for this type of storytelling. I really enjoy it, and I think a lot of all of us, at least who are participating and do. And a last thank you and appreciation for all of our presenters this evening: Debra Jackson, Alben Chamberlain, Faizah Rajput, Juanita Mantz, Charlotte McKenzie, and John the Fiasco. I'm going to hand it over to Christina, and she will let you know how to follow the Inlandia Institute and learn about upcoming events and opportunities to potentially share and participate in the Flame.
Thank you so much, Stevie, and thank you to all of our presenters. You've done such a beautiful job, and I know you worked really hard on your stories in your workshops, and they all came out great. Such unique stories. Great job. I hope the audience also enjoyed them as much as I did. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Also, you can follow us on our social media channels such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to find out about the next Flame episode and how to get involved and possibly tell your own story. So thank you, everyone. Thank you again, presenters. Everyone have a wonderful night, and we'll see you again. Thank you.